very good morning to you. It's another beautiful Furahi Day morning. My name is James Okumu. Welcome to Man Up. Hii ndio kikao ya wanaume. This is where we sit down as men and talk about issues that affect us. You know, one of the things we pride ourselves in as men, and one of the things sometimes we like to emphasize when it comes to our homes, is that I am the man of the house. I am the leader of the home. The question is, do you still feel like a leader when hauna kakitu? Hakuna kakitu kwa mfuko. You've lost your job, or maybe your wife earns more than you. Your salary can get into your wife's salary 3 times. You're earning a third or half of what your wife is earning. Do you still feel like a leader, or do the circumstances begin to intimidate you and your leadership capabilities? Is money and leadership in the home connected, or are those two entirely different things? Can you still be the leader if you're not the one bringing home the bread and the bacon, or does that intimidate you? If your wife is the one paying the rent, vile watu wanasemaga huyo jamaa amewekwa ni kama tukuku mahali hapo. Do you still feel like the leader of the home? That's what we want to talk about today. You know, when this COVID-19 hit, a lot of things were disrupted. People lost their jobs. You have situations where both husband and wife lost jobs. You have situations where the wife lost the job or the husband lost the job. So if you're in that situation right now, where you lost your job but your wife is now the one bringing home the bacon, or your wife earns more than you, I want you to talk to us today and tell us how you're managing this situation. Leadership and kakitu kwa mfuko, are they connected? And how do we create a balance? How do you continue being a leader even though kakitu kwa mfuko kamepungua? I've got 2 amazing guests. I will be introducing them to you in the next short while to engage in this discussion. 20316 is the SMS line. It's Man Up. Today we talk about leadership at home. Does money matter? In studio with us via Zoom, I have George Mugwe, leadership coach, founder, Men of Purpose. How are you doing, my friend? Good to have you.
Very well, James, and thank you for inviting me to the show.
Karibu sana. We also have Pastor Angel Mahehu, trainer and mentor. Pastor, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Glad to be in the men's zone.
Yeah, today the men have got an angel in their midst. So, money issues and leadership at the home. I'm just wondering, George, even as we get into this discussion, can you pull apart provision from leadership? Because when we talk about money allows me to be a provider. So can you separate the two, leadership and provision?
All right, thank you. And this is a good discussion that we need to engage in, especially during this particular time.
Yeah.
I'd like to say from the very onset that this is a subject I'm passionate about empowering men. And that's why we have this program called Men of Purpose, because we want to raise men that are purposeful. So coming to your question, man as the head of the home is a position given by God. Okay, the Bible says very clearly in the book of Ephesians chapter 5, that man shall be the head. So it is a position. It is not determined whether you have the money or not. Okay, it's not determined by the feelings that you have. It is a stated position that a man has been given. And therefore, what a man needs to do, because this is your rightful position, then take the lead and be the head of the family, with or without money. Because it's not money that determines whether you are the head or not, Abana. It is your God-given, God-granted position. It's like, for example, you are born a firstborn. If you are a firstborn, that's a position in the family, okay? It does not matter whether you have the resources or not, you shall still remain the firstborn. Yeah. And therefore, that's the same thing that needs to be looked at as a husband, that you are the head of the family. It has nothing to do with whether you have the money or not.
Okay. Pastor Angel, let me rope you into this discussion. George has talked about if you're the firstborn, you're the firstborn. Sometimes I find in some families you have a firstborn who is just a firstborn because they came out first. but it's that, like they don't understand what it means to be a firstborn, and so you find the younger one is actually the one taking the lead in the family. So speaking to you as a woman, when we talk about the man being the head of the home and the leader, what does that mean to a woman?
I think I'll begin first by trying to clarify between leadership and headship. Because you see, women lead in the different places where they have been elected to lead. So it is very easy to confuse and think that leadership is up for grabs in the home because we see leadership being given to women in other places. Headship is not questionable in the family. As a wife and as a woman, I stand by 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3. God the head of Christ, Christ the head of man, man the head of woman.
What does that mean?
What that means is that in the home, it is the man that calls the shots. It is him who is being given the mandate by God to take the position of leadership, to lead us to the place where the vision of our family is going to be the one that determines where we are going, some of the choices that we will make as a family, investments, our home. And provision also included there.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, we are usually told about, is it the 4 Ps or the 5 Ps, George? You know, when we talk about the man and the role of the man and the purpose of the man, you know, we talk about being the priest of the home. We talk about being the protector. We talk about being the provider. So when I'm at that place where I cannot fulfill that role of provision, I kind of get confused because I feel like I don't qualify anymore. I'm inadequate. How do we fight that? Because as a man, there's a nature on the inside of me to provide and to protect my family. And when I'm not able to do that, my masculinity is under attack.
Actually, James, there are 7 Ps. They are not even 4.
Oh,
right?
Okay. There's new and updated.
Physical presence. One of the P's is the physical presence. You have to be purposeful, a protector, a prophet, a priest, a provider, and you've got to be prayerful. All right. Now, when it comes to the area of the provider, I think one of the mistakes that you've done is to limit provision to money.
Okay.
Yeah.
A man can provide in many other ways apart from money. For instance, that woman needs protection. You're still providing that kind of protection. You're providing, you know, you are affirming your family, you are affirming your children. That is part of the provision that you bring in, okay? When you bring a vision and you are telling the family, this is where we are going, that is still part of provision. So we should not limit it to the shillings and the cents, because that's where we make the mistake. Secondly, if the wife then is earning more than you, or you don't have a job and she's the one who is earning, then in that case, look, if you have that kind of cordial relationship, then she brings the money and we put it on the table and we discuss what shall we do with this money, because it's not her money and my money, it is our money. All right. When I bring my money to the table and she brings hers, it is ours. Because the Bible says the two shall be one. So the decisions that are being made in as far as where the family is going, it is a collective responsibility. Yes, I am the head, but there is the input from the rest of the cabinet. You know, my wife is my vice president. The children are the cabinet ministers. So it is a decision made at a family level. So the mistake that is made is your money, my money, you know, my job, your job. It's more, we should talk more of ours. What should we do with this that is ours? Then there shall not be that rift of yours and mine.
Okay, I find it difficult because society and even the church, you know, has placed so much emphasis on this money aspect. Even when we look at even leadership in this country, you know, kama hauna kakitu watu watakupigia kura. I mean, who are you? Lazima uwe na kakitu. You can't just come here and give us promises. What do you have in your hand? We want to see it and also appreciate it. And even when we come to the church, when we start talking about the blessing of God, we measure it by how much you have. If you come in with a brand new car, Jehovah has rained on me, my friend. I have a testimony. And so whether it's in church, whether it's out here in society, it is the money factor. And so when we come to the home and begin to say the money factor is not really it becomes confusing. How do we clear that confusion, Pastor Angel? Because even out here, kama hauna kakitu, there are some women who will not look at you. The moment you start driving this 4x4, squeeze umekuwa mtu mpoa, even in the church.
I think what you're laying out is actually quite real, because the society teaches us that prominence, influence has to come with liquidity of cash.
Yes.
In the olden days, it came with wisdom, it came with taking responsibility. And maybe that's where the error came, because we allowed the world to begin defining what a leader ought to be in regards to their definition. Because you see, in the world, then you rank high depending on how much we can count your worth. So sometimes you will even observe and see people who are put to give a stand on something. If they don't have money, if they don't have something to back them, then they are looked upon as if they have nothing to offer. In the home, the mistake the woman will make in thinking that the position of headship and leadership of her husband is defined by the money leaves me to beg and ask, did she marry the bank account or did she marry the man, the leader?
Yeah.
You have been told about the 7 Ps.
Yes.
You notice that provision is just 1 P.
Yeah.
So are you saying that all the rest are negated by lack of provision? And how come in everything else we are willing to be one except money? When money step in now, we become 2.
Yes.
But we are 1 in everything else. And I think a big mistake is in the mentorship that we women are being given now, because we are allowing the society, the media, the Western culture to come and infiltrate, and we kick out what the Word of God says.
Okay. George, is it that as men we have also not understood what it means to be a man, what we are called to do, and our place in the family, such that when finances are low or they're out of the picture, it disrupts everything?
I think one of the biggest callings that men we have been given, James, is we have been called to build. Men are builders, yeah? And building starts from that day when you said, I do.
Yes.
You know? You started building your family from then. And then you need to realize that then as you are building, you as the man, you are the foundation. So everything else is being built on you. You know, when a building has a problem, the engineers don't go checking the walls and all that. They go check, is the foundation okay?
Very true.
And so I think the biggest challenge that has happened is that men have not been taught or been exposed to the fact that, look, you are supposed to build this family. Jesus gave a very good example of the house in Matthew chapter 7 from verse 24, when he equated, you know, the wise man and the foolish man, one who built on a rock, one who built on sand. And it's interesting to see that the elements that made the house that was built on the rock, it was the rain, it was the floods, it was the wind. Those are the same elements that built the other house.
Yeah.
Okay? But this house stood because it had a solid foundation. What I want to tell the men out there is, look, you're going to be tested. Your foundation for you as a man is going to be tested in these 3 areas.
Yeah.
The rain, representing prosperity or the blessing. The floods that are representing a catastrophe, okay? And the wind that represents the change, okay? Every man will be tested in these 3 areas. You are going to be too prosperous, too blessed in quotes, as we say. Yeah? That is a test. Will you still stand? Because even when it comes to there, and that's when men start thinking of getting another wife and a third, you know, a third one.
Yes.
So now I'm more prosperous. You're going to be tested in adversity when there is nothing, you know. But you're also going to be tested in the areas of change.
Okay.
Because change will happen. Corona made us change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So depending on how you have built your family, because you are the foundation upon which that family is being built, testing must surely come. And so the lack of a job or the lack of a provision, let's look at it as a test. Okay. And it's a temporary situation. That's why King James keeps on saying it came to pass.
Yeah.
It will come to pass.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the mistake we normally make is making permanent the decisions based on very temporal situations.
Wow.
So I think what I'd like to tell the men out there, you are a builder. Build. Because if you have been building and the woman is a helper, you know, she comes in to help.
Yeah.
Even when there is adversity, okay, she will be there to support you even during that particular time. I think the mistake is that we have not been building. So when the testing comes, we are shaken because either we are not building on the rock, Jesus Christ, or we have not been building at all.
Okay, I like that illustration, George. Thank you for sharing that. Now, shortly, I'll want us to talk about teamwork in a situation like what we are describing today, where either the man loses a job or the man is earning less than what the wife is earning. How are the two of them supposed to work together through this kind of situations? If you have any questions for us today, 20316 is the SMS line and the WhatsApp number is 0786. Leadership at home, does money matter? We are hanging out with George, who's a leadership coach and founder of Men of Purpose, and also Pastor Angel, who's a trainer and a mentor. I have a comment here coming in from Dave in Lower Kabete. Dave says, Pastor Jemo, husbands in ideal context ought to be the breadwinners. In that sense, they are providers. However, this is tricky, for in as much as it's an aspect of balanced manhood, it shouldn't exclusively be used as the measure that accords the entire value of leadership. One must be careful not to let ego hijack and dominate. Life not being ideal, a wife may have capability to make more. This has to be dealt with in wisdom, for it has the potential to create friction, and if not managed well, it can even break a marriage. I think I would be comfortable my wife making more. To us, money is a means to an end, and it shouldn't be glorified to distort God's order. And you say you see a lot of wisdom in the visitors we have today. Dave in Lower Kabete, thank you so much. If you have a question for us, 20316 SMS line, WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. So how can a couple work together in a situation like this where the wife is earning more or the husband has lost his job, is not earning anything? So maybe, George, you can tell us how the husband should look at this whole issue, and then Pastor Angel, you can tell us how the wife should also approach this kind of a situation. George.
Sure.
Thank you, James. I think it's a reality that some of these jobs that you have, they are never permanent.
Yeah.
Long are the days of permanent and pensionable. Yeah?
Yes.
More and more now we are having contract jobs.
Yes.
Okay. So personally, I'll share even from a personal experience, because it's something that I've gone through, where I lost my job at one time, and my wife was still working. Okay. Of course, the first few days there is days of adjustment. You go through the grief,
Yes.
just like losing a person.
Yeah.
But you quickly come out of it. But let me say this, I think beyond that, a marriage is built on trust. The glue that holds together a marriage is trust. And going forward, what we agreed is, look, now we have one salary that we are going to be depending on.
Yes.
And therefore, let's rework our priorities, okay? Our expenses have then got to be adjusted accordingly. And earlier on, you talked on the whole area of teamwork.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got to agree as a team, then this is what you are going to do. This is what you are going to do away without, so that we can be able to make progress. And that's where actually you find the wife really playing that role of a helper. These women have amazing ideas on how we can be able to save on costs. So if you partner then without that particular stage, it becomes very, very easy. But then that does not remove your role as a leader.
Yeah.
Whether you recognize it or not, you are still the head. And at this particular point is where then the wife needs to come in very, very strongly and affirm you in that particular position. Because remember, at this particular stage, you are at your lowest.
Yeah.
All your guys you are hanging out with, when they see your call, they don't even want to pick it up.
Yes.
I keep on saying this. When your graph is going up, you know your friends. When your graph is going down, you know, sorry, when your graph is going up, your friends know you. When your graph is going down, that's when you know your friends.
Yes.
When you look at your phone and you wonder, kuna shida na hii simu ama namna gani?
No one is calling
So
me.
the only person who can then stand with you during that time is your wife. And if she affirms you, if she, you know, speaks well of you, highly of you, man, there's nothing that you cannot be able to do.
Yeah.
You'll be able to quickly come out of your depressed state, find something to do, and progress on. I think, again, the mistake the women make is to hit a guy who is already down.
Yes.
Kumkanyagia chini, you know? When wanaume wa aina gani, you know? Look at the other men, what they are doing. Can't you be a man? And you are really crushing the ego of that guy.
Yes.
And you're not going to make progress. But you psych him up, you massage his ego, tell him you are the man, you can be able to rise from this situation. That guy will be prepared to go to the next step. So don't limit it just to the area of finances. It can be anything. It could be a sickness. It could be, you know, a business going under. We need the affirmation of a wife for us to be able to make progress.
Yeah, I love what you shared, George. Pastor Angel, maybe you can tell us what is the role of the woman in a situation like this. Sio kuambia your husband, sasa wewe ni mwanaume wa aina gani? Unakaa tu kwa nyumba ukiosha vyombo. Wanaume wengine wako huko nje wanafanya kazi, wewe unaosha vyombo. Talk to us, Pastor Angel.
Wow. I really love what George has shared because as a woman, if you don't actually know what the definition of who your husband is, then you will only define him by that one role. Such that now everything else is put at jeopardy when that happens. I'll also be quick to say, it's good to know what is it that is causing him to be earning less. Did you marry him earning less? Did maybe the business he was doing shut down? Is it maybe a natural calamity like what we had, the pandemic, where maybe people are retrenched? Or is it that he's working in a business where it's seasonal income? Maybe it is when children are on holiday that the money comes in. Or worse, is if he's just a lazy couch potato. And you see, that determines the response of the woman. Because if it is just laziness, surely you cannot expect that woman to respond the same way as a woman who her husband lost the job because of something that happened that caused there to be a sidetracking of his income.
Okay.
So is it laziness or is it because something has happened that has caused this income to come down? Then now comes the response. I love what George said. George said that now it becomes the responsibility of the woman to endorse his ego, to endorse who he is, to make sure that that part of provision doesn't now redefine his role as the head of that home. It is very foolish for a woman to think that because you're the one who is earning more, that things have overturned in the house.
Yes.
No, they have not. He still carries the vision of that home. He's still the priest of that home, regardless. And like I was saying earlier, if you think that it's about how much money you've put on the table, then you are confused in this sense. What you bring and what he brings, as he well put it, George, it's ours.
Yeah.
So when it comes, it doesn't say it is now the wife has brought, it is we have brought. Especially if it is not in his control. Especially if it is not because of a reason of laziness or a reason where he's just a man who doesn't want to provide for his home.
Yeah.
So now when that money comes on the table, I was laughing during the off-break conversation you were having there, and the lady was saying that you give the money to him to then be the one to allocate and make the payments so that you re-endorse, make him feel this, you're still the man.
Yeah.
And you're reminding him that what I have is ours, what you have is ours. So you're not allowing yourself to be confused by the new state. The house that was built on the rock was built on the foundation of Christ.
Yeah.
Christ is the rock of the family. And you have been called to submit to your husband as Christ submits to God. And you submit to your husband as the church submits to God.
Okay. I love the aspect you brought in of the conversation I was having earlier, because sometimes, maybe George, you can weigh in on this. Sometimes, without knowing, you can paint a picture in the home where even the children, in a sense, lose a bit of respect for their dad. Because, usiulize dad ananga kakitu, uliza mom. uliza mom. Ukiuliza dad, hakuna kitu utapata. Just go to mom. Mom ndio sonko wa hii hao.
Yes, that's true.
George,
yes.
George, I don't know what you think about that, and how can you avoid that kind of a situation?
Thank you, James. I'll come back again to the whole issue of building, okay? Because as a man, be deliberate in your leadership.
Yes.
Okay? Very deliberate, whether you have it or not. Know that you're the leader and recognize you're the leader and be deliberate about it. Number two, to avoid now what you're talking about, in every home, there should be a culture.
Yeah.
A man should be able to build a culture in the home where, as you assert yourself as the leader, automatically you're going to earn the respect, not only of your wife, but also of your children. Remember, respect is not demanded, you earn it.
You earn it, yeah.
And perhaps part of the reason why that happens is because the man has not earned his respect in that particular home. Number three, as you build, be present. Physical presence, by the way, creates a very, very powerful bond where children and the wife know as long as daddy is around, everything is okay. Everything is under control. That's how you keep on having the building blocks. Then lead by example.
Yeah.
The things that you're saying don't do, are you doing them? Yeah. Are you the example? Are you the role model that your children look up to so that you are not losing that particular respect? By the time children are talking like that, it's because there is some moral grounds that you have already lost, that they cannot say, this is the kind of dad that you have. And then finally, the other building block I'd like to say, prioritize your family. And you know, one of the ways of knowing where your priorities are, there are two areas you need to check. Check the man's checkbook, or in our case, check his M-Pesa statement.
Yes.
That is one area you need to check. Number two, check his diary.
Yeah.
Okay. Does his diary consist of giving priority to the family or other people? Does his M-Pesa statement have his money going towards his family?
Yeah.
If you focus on your family on those two areas, you're prioritizing on your family. Then you earn the respect that you're looking for in that particular home.
Okay. Shortly, we'll talk about this. There's a message that's coming here. It says, I'm loving the discussion on men and provision. I have seen a situation where a man loses his job and there's nothing the wife can do that can make him feel better. He develops a sense of insecurity. He starts projecting this to his wife and his children, and that insecurity manifests in violence and even in infidelity as they go out to try and seek validation. How do you handle a case like that? We'll talk about that shortly. Remember, it's Man Up. We are talking about leadership at home. Does money matter? If you have any questions or a comment, feel free to send it in via text on 20316 or WhatsApp on 0786 316 316. My name is James Okumu. We are talking about leadership at home. Does money matter? Hanging out with George, leadership coach and founder, Men of Purpose, and Pastor Angel, trainer and mentor. Your comments are coming in. Phyllis Ndongo, all the way in Saudi Arabia. You say, I'm loving the show and learning, getting tips on how to handle situations in the family. Good for you. Thank you for tuning in. I also have another message here. This gentleman is sharing how when he lost his job, he left his job in 2016, started a business. It went down in 2017, and only my wife stood with me through all this, still taking care of our two children. My wife has been a pillar of strength, standing with me and supporting me, but my role as a man and the leader of the home never changed. A good wife doesn't look down on her husband when he is down, but supports him. And you say, I know a couple, the husband earns less than the wife, but she brings all to her husband to allocate the cash. If the children need anything, the woman tells them, ask your dad, and thus she's helping in the family and just boosting his morale. So let's go back to the SMS I read earlier. Let me read it again. This one is saying, I'm loving the discussion on men and provision. I have seen a situation where a man loses his job and there's nothing the wife can do that can make him feel better. He develops a sense of insecurity and starts projecting this to his wife and to his kids. That insecurity manifests in violence and even in infidelity as he goes out there trying to seek validation. So how do you handle this kind of a situation, George?
Yeah, I think we need also to be very candid and honest here, that loss of a job for a man can be very, very devastating.
Yeah.
Especially if you are the breadwinner in that particular home and you don't know how to face that particular, situation. In fact, cases have been reported of men who lost their jobs, but the following day they were still going back to hang around the office.
Yes.
They really can't come to terms with it. I think we should look at it, as I said earlier, like just losing a loved one. You actually go through a grief, okay? And so you go through the various steps. The first thing, of course, is to deny. You're in a denial stage, okay? Then you go from there to the anger stage. You go to the bitter stage, etc. I'm not a counselor, but I hear those are the stages one really has to go through. And so for such a man, I think what should happen is that people should understand where he is at, okay? And so let him grieve as though he has lost someone, and let him have someone going around with him. I think one of the strengths that women have that men don't have is their support system, okay? I've seen women really coming up for their fellow women. They will cry and they will, just stand up with them. And the mistake we make as men is that we have no other man to stand with us. And so what I encourage men is look for accountability partner. At least in your phone book, I know you have so many men, but can you identify for me 4 that you can be able, day or night, they can be able to pick you up? This story of Jesus and these 4 men that brought, that paralyzed man from the roof. I mean, that story really blows my mind out. You can imagine these 4 men carried this guy, and when they found the room was full, went up to the roof. Have you ever thought of the risk those guys were taking?
Yes.
Carrying this guy up to the roof, ripping up the roof open and bringing the man. Those were men who trusted that our guy is going to be healed. And Jesus said, because of the faith of the 4 men, this guy got healed.
What can you add to that, Pastor Angel, as a wife, if your husband is in that space, how do you handle that situation?
I think it would begin from before.
From before?
How did you used to treat? Yes. How did you used to treat your husband? Because you see, if the endorsement of his leadership, his headship was based on his earning, that you celebrated him more because of that, then when he loses it, he feels like he has lost your respect, he has lost your trust, he has lost your dependence. So it has to begin from before. So it does not begin to manifest after. It must begin to manifest in advance. So that when this happens, then you provide room for him to go through what George was speaking about, the grief of the loss and the identity crisis, and looking now on ahead without the assurance, because provision becomes now the servant of meeting the needs of the family, and now thinking again, oh my God, I have to ask my wife. She has to be the one now, kind of feel like she's calling the shots, because now you have to consult, you have to speak, and you have to. So now you as the woman have to make room for him to find it comfortable. That he can be able to share with you. Be the one, make room for him to come to you.
Okay.
If you find that he is maybe getting into a depression because of what is happening, such that now, like he was, like the message clearly says, has gone out now, he's looking for affirmation, maybe in infidelity, then find someone if he doesn't have someone who can intervene.
Okay.
Because sometimes you'll find that maybe your husband doesn't have maybe friends, maybe they're the ones even mocking him.
Very true.
Yes, so now you need to find someone, maybe in family, a brother, an uncle, somebody who can come and reinstitute back in his muscles. You got what it takes.
Okay.
Reinstitute again, because sometimes it's not enough to hear your wife say it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need another man to come and affirm you and tell you, come on, man, let's do this. If you know someone who has an opportunity, let him make the introduction. Say, hey, by the way, one of my pals was saying there's this opening in this and this place.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
Okay.
Actively make room for him to be reinstituted back into that place where he feels endorsed as the leader, as the head, as the provider.
Okay.
Yes.
Phoebe from Nyeri is saying, good morning. It's not just job loss. Normally in marriages, men tend to be a few years older than women, and so sometimes they tend to retire early. That's very
Yes.
true. That's also
Very
another,
correct.
That's also another issue.
Yes.
Before we wrap up, George, maybe you could share something. Oh, okay. I think George is out, eh? George, are you still
Just come
there?
back in.
George, are you back
I'm
in?
there.
Ah, great.
He's back in.
Yes. 2 minutes because we're out of time. As men, we tend to attach our identity to what we do. Our jobs. And that's why when we meet as men, the first question we ask each other is, what do you do?
What do you do?
Because we want to size each other up. Wewe unafanyaga? Wewe ni fundi wa bao? Mi ni manager. Niko hapa, wewe uko hapa. It's common. So how do we get to that place where we stop attaching our identity as a man to the job that we do? 2 minutes.
My 2 minutes is be authentic. I think what men lack is authenticity, to know who you are. But for a human being, you're not a human doing. Yeah?
Yes.
Human doing, now you saying I'm a barber, I'm a carpenter,
Yes.
I'm a what? That's not who you are. That is just a label, okay, that you have. And those labels can be removed. And actually, that's part of the devastation that men go through. Because now I no longer hold the title CEO or the title director or the title manager, you know. So I feel that I don't belong. But once you know who you are, that you are the man that God created,
Hallelujah.
in Christ, then nothing should be able to move you. That's why we talked of that foundation.
Yes.
Because it cannot be shaken, it cannot be moved. The Bible says in the book of Proverbs 10:25 that the righteous has an everlasting foundation. Your foundation is everlasting, you know. And so may you be founded in Christ. Let Christ be your identity,
Very true.
and not what you.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time. George, asante sana. Pastor Angel, thank you for finding the time to be a part of this conversation. Looking at the SMSs, it's been a good conversation from the responses that we are getting. We'll definitely find time and pick up this conversation again, especially in these seasons that we are living in. A lot of people having lost their jobs. We need to affirm one another and build each other up. So asanteni sana. Well, we're out of time for Man Up today, but right now we want to get into food for thought with Professor Ndete. Today we are kicking off a brand new series talking about OCD, Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. In case you don't know what that is, well, listen in as we get into this brand new topic with Professor Ndete.
Food for Thought with Professor David Ndete.
A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's another episode of Food for Thought with Professor Ndete. Now today, we want to kick off a brand new series. We want to talk about what is commonly known as OCD, Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, to understand what it is, how it presents itself, and what we need to know about it. Professor Ndete, good to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Today I managed to come to your office.
Thank you very much. You're most welcome.
Your office is our studio.
Thank you. Yes, I can see that.
Yes. So, obsessive compulsive disorder, what is it?
Well, this is a very common condition to start with. I think more commonly than people appreciate, because what people hear of are those extreme cases, and we will have an opportunity to talk about those extreme cases. But if you look at the word, it has two words. I mean, that term has got two words. It's what we call obsessive. And when we are talking about obsessive, basically we are talking about our minds, our thoughts, what is going on in our minds.
Yeah.
And this may not find itself expression in terms of what we do, in terms of activities. Then the word compulsive implies that whatever is going on in our minds actually finds expression in some activities. And it's when we see these activities that we realize that there's a problem.
Yeah.
A person who has just got obsessive thoughts, they may struggle with these thoughts for a long time. And we never get to know, or other people, or even family members never get to know what is going on.
Because they're not being expressed
They are
yet.
not being expressed as yet.
Okay.
And they may torture those people tremendously.
Wow.
I do remember a case of a young dad who had this condition, presenting male only with obsessions. And in his mind, all that was going in his mind was to strike his young son on the head and kill him. And these thoughts kept on coming to his mind all the time. He didn't want to tell his wife. He didn't want to tell anybody because they would think that he is crazy. So all he would do is that the thought of killing his son was outrageous. So the only way he could cope with this situation without telling anybody was to stay away.
Stay away from his son.
Stay away from the son. And people couldn't quite understand why he was doing this.
Yeah.
And he thought that the safest way is to stay away from the son, because every time he was near us, he got closer to the son, this is what he went through. And of course, if he told his wife what was going through, her reaction would be, oh, you can't do that, and then run away with the child.
Yes.
So there are people who have these thoughts. They can even have mental images of them doing terrible things. And so far, up to this point, these things are kept to themselves and in their minds, but they can be torturing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So actually, this is something that begins in the mind, because for many of us, when we hear OCD, one of the pictures that comes to mind is people who are always washing their hands. Even though in this season of COVID, all of us are washing their hands.
Yeah, like I have my sanitizer here. No, that is not obsessive compulsive disorder. That is normal behavior. And if you did do that yourself, or I did do that in my office, then it will be abnormal.
Very true.
You expect to sanitize yourself, and that's perfectly normal. So it is these things that are completely abnormal, and they do know, they realize at the back of their minds that these thoughts are normal. What is going through their minds is abnormal. At least they know that it is abnormal.
So that's where the struggle is.
That's where the struggle is.
And they know they're abnormal.
Yeah, they know what they are doing is abnormal.
Yeah.
Or what they are thinking is abnormal. And it's so abnormal that they don't want to share it with other people.
Okay.
And they keep on struggling with that condition. And no wonder they can become very depressed. And the people don't know what is happening. But I think you get to learn that when you see some of these things and you start talking to people, you're able to pick some of these things very, very easily in the clinical situation. And then you start talking about these things. Like, for example, this young man who was running away from his son.
Yeah.
He didn't tell anybody until when he talked to us and said, well, I'm scared of staying next to my son. And then it clicked. And then we start talking about it.
You know, Professor, I'm just thinking like a pastor. If somebody came to me and they tell me that they are always having these thoughts, especially like the example you've given, you know, I'm always having these thoughts of killing my son. The first thing I would think of is, I think you're demon possessed.
Yes, unfortunately, that is a very common interpretation. And as I have said in other interactions, in the interviews in the past, you see, whenever there is a phenomenon, whenever something is happening, we always try to make sense of what is happening. We try to explain in our own minds, even using our cultures, using our religion, what is really happening. So a pastor like you, if you have that kind of story, the most immediate reaction is that you are demon possessed. I do not blame you. Because that is the only explanatory model that you have to explain this kind of behavior. And that is all all over the world. It's not just because you are a pastor in Kenya. It's all over the world. That is the only explanatory model you have. Or if it's not a pastor and say you went to see somebody else, maybe a traditional healer, you have been bewitched.
Exactly.
And that is the starting point. So you don't get into arguments. I'm not going to get into argument with you on this issue. And neither am I going to get into argument with a traditional person on this. Because that's the only way they know to explain these things. But for me, I have a different explanatory model.
Exactly.
And that is a medical model where we think we understand what is happening in the brain. And if I sit with you and say, Pastor, I understand the way you are explaining this, or you understand this, I perfectly understand that. But there is also a different explanatory model. People understand. They say, oh yes, I did not know about this. And this is where, when we don't understand what is going on, and our explanatory model does not seem to explain everything, that's when we begin to stigmatize things.
Yes.
Because we do not understand.
Yes.
And many people have been talking about, without digressing, many people have been talking about stigma towards mental illness. I believe the reason why we have this stigma towards mental illness, in this particular case, obsessive compulsive disorder, is because they really don't quite understand what is going on. For example, how can you explain a person who says that he's hearing voices, and for you is hearing those voices for you, and yet you can't see people around around that person, and people get into fights about this condition, this phenomena. But the moment you understand what's going on from a different explanatory model, then you don't stigmatize that condition.
Very true.
You know it is a medical condition. It cannot happen to anybody. Nobody is immune to or from these conditions. Today is me, tomorrow is you, another time is so and so.
Well, that's all the time we have today for Food for Thought with Professor Ndete. Thank you so much for tuning in. We haven't quite finished this discussion on OCD, so ensure you hook up with us again next week as we continue to build on this discussion. Have yourselves a great day.